So it's Friday, it's you hangout time, and today I'm joined with the one and only Mr. Karminator, aka Matt Brailsford. How are you doing, Matt?
Not bad. Hello, everybody.
Good, good, good. Obviously, as always, we get people to kind of introduce themselves. So how did you get involved with Umbraco, Matt? So how did you discover it? What was kind of the story behind that?
Probably pretty similar to most other people working in agencies, building websites, and I think someone else actually recommended it to me. Give it a look and have a play around with it. Can't say I liked XSLT back then, but I learned to love it and embrace it, and it actually turned out pretty good. So yeah, here I am.
Excellent. So that was 2, 3, 4 years ago now?
It's probably about 3 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously you're more commonly known in the Umbraco community as the Karminator, but I suppose for people who don't know the story about the Karminator, would you care to elaborate or care to describe how that nickname came about?
Well, I think it was pretty much I had a job at the time where I had very little to do, so I just spent all day on the
Very little to do.
Yeah. So obviously I didn't tell them that, but yeah.
Of course.
Spent all day on the forums, playing around with Umbraco, learning inside and outs, and I think I just plastered the community with new stuff. So.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So yeah, you are the package machine, as I suppose that you're known for. Obviously, you've had a bit of a lull, I suppose. The Karminator's had a break, recharged his batteries, and the Karminator is now back with some V7 packages. Yeah. That's right, yeah?
Yeah, I don't think I can keep the same momentum, but yeah.
Why not?
Playing around with version 7, yeah, it's pretty good. It's good fun, actually. I think I like to kind of stay behind and just wait for things to stabilize, but I think it's got a lot more solid now. So just spending some time playing around with it, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm getting into it.
Fantastic. So today you're going to demo. Is it Vorto? You've called the package?
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us what Vorto is?
Yeah.
Or is it best to show us?
I can do both.
We can do both. Let's do both.
Well, I'll start with a brief introduction then. So Vorto allows you to do one-on-one translations within Umbraco. So the kind of usual recommended way is to probably do like multiple websites and set each one of those up in a different language. But sometimes it's good to have an option as well. And I think one of the old techniques, there were other ways of doing it in version 4 upwards sort of thing, where you could do one-on-one translations, which is one property. And for all the languages that you want to do, you basically enter a value for each one of those. So what Vorto does is just tries to make that a little bit nicer and give you some nice handy extension methods for within your code to make that easy to work with as well.
Cool.
So that's kind of short introduction, and I can, if I share my screen, I can run you through a short demo.
Fantastic.
So here we go. And you can see my screen, right?
Give it a second. Yep, we can now.
Ooh, I think I'm running on a slight short delay, so let me know if anything goes, if I kind of get way ahead of myself.
No, it's all good.
But so I'm just starting out with standard website with starter kit, and I've just got back office, and I'm just logging.
I like that you've slightly plugged in another package there on the login, that you've got your launch key package that's in development.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Top secret, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah. So all I'm going to play with is this banner bit on the front end. So there's a few bits of text, and we'll probably play around with the image as well, just to show that you can handle certain things. But here I've got back office open, and you can see there's a few text field properties for each of the lines of text that are on the home page. I've gone ahead as well and just set up a few host names, so they're all pointing to the same kind of homepage node, but I've just got like various language versions of it, so they're all pointing to the same website, same page. It'll just allow us to easily kind of see how switching the languages changes the values and things in a moment.
Fantastic.
So those are set up, and obviously I've set up a few languages in here as well, just to kind of jump ahead. But that's all standard stuff, so there's no magic.
So it's just normal translation or language stuff in Umbraco. Yeah,
exactly. So we've got these fields here. They're already populated with the standard stuff that comes with Umbraco. So what I'll do is go ahead and just swap one of these for a Vorto one, and we'll see how that works. So again, I've got Vorto already installed, and I've already got a text string one set up. But what you get is it basically wraps around other existing property editors. So the property editor does what it already does, and we just wrap around it a little thing that lets it duplicates it multiple times per language and just gives you a nice interface for that.
Okay. So does it only work with like the default data types out the box, or if I create my own custom data type, that would work as well?
It should do. There's a few things still need ironing out because there's a few data types that do special things like the upload control and things like that. They do some
that's fair enough.
Kind of special magic, but most things should work. If they just use their standard functionality, should work pretty well with it.
Fantastic.
So all I've done here is set up a Vorto text string, chose my Vorto property editor, and then in the drop down you just tell it which property editor do you want to wrap. So in this instance, I'm just going to wrap around the text string. You can say whether you want to use what you want to use as a language source. So you can use all the installed languages. So that basically reads all the languages out of the languages setting, languages tree in the settings section.
Okay.
Or we can use an in-use languages, which means it has to be assigned as a host name. So if you've got a lot of languages set up, but you only want to use a subset of those that are actually being used by the website, if we turn on the in-use button, then that'll actually just use the languages that are being physically used. So you don't get a big massive tree if you've got loads of languages, but you're only using a few of them.
Fantastic.
Basically. If you are using in-use, you can also use an XPath statement to choose the nodes which have got the host names defined on them. That's quite advanced, but that's handy if you've got multiple websites and you want and you've got different languages on those different websites. But that's pretty advanced, so I won't really go into that. Just there is an option there to kind of do further filtering if you need to do that.
Fair enough. I'm sure Christian Steinemeister, XSL2 guru, will love that.
All the hardcore multilingual people will love that. Everybody else will be like, I don't know. Anyway.
What's this XBAR thing?
Yeah. So, and then the last option is just whether you want to display the English names or whether you want to display the native names. So again, it's pretty handy. You can choose whichever you want to do. So, so once your property editor is set up, then we'll just jump over to the Doctype. So I'll just go over to the home page, Doctype, and in here on banner, I'll switch the banner header from being a text string to using the Vorto text string. And then save that. And if I jump back to the home page now, you'll be able to see the difference.
Ah, sweet. Okay, so we've now got an English tab and like a globe tab.
Yep. So you can see here we've got a text field again. It doesn't remember the previous value, but we can just pop that in. So we'll just drop in the English value there. And then what you get is basically a nice little drop down of all the languages that it's found to use. So we can just say, okay, I want to pop in a Danish one. So now the tab changes to Danish and you get a new field. And we can drop the Danish translation into there.
Cool.
And we can go to French and do the same. And it's got a few other nice touches in as well. So there's these little pin icons. So you can actually say pin a specific language on there. That's kind of targeted towards maybe if you were wrapping a rich text editor and you've got a lot of content to kind of translate. People generally use one as the source and translate it to another language.
Okay, so you could quickly kind of flip between the two.
So you can just easily flick between, as you say there, and that just makes it nice and easy to kind of jump between the two. And then you can clear those off and just keep standard whichever one's currently selected.
Okay, that's fantastic.
So I've dropped a few translations in there. So if I just do a save and publish on that, if I go to the front end, it won't work at the moment because it shouldn't do. It shouldn't be reading because that value has been converted into a Vorto value. It's more complicated the way that it stored it. But what we can do is in our partial view. So again, this is just the code for the partial view. Oh, that's why it was already. I've already told it to use Vorto. That's why. But basically, how it would run before, you would do get property value. So that's the standard Umbraco way of getting a value off of a content object.
Yep.
So all you have to do is swap that to be get Vorto value instead.
So it's just an extension method on iPublish content.
Yes, exactly.
That will do the magic and convert it.
Yeah. So what it does is it looks at the website that you're currently on, gets its host name, works out what culture it is, and dynamically chooses the right one to use. There is overloads if you want to kind of specify an exact one that you want to use. So if you always wanted to use English, you can force it to use a specific language. But if you don't define a culture, then it kind of works it out from the actual website that you're on. So that's why that one worked, because it was already there. And it's actually a good example because when it wasn't Vorto, it falls back to the default. So you could, in theory, use this for every, instead of get property value. And if it's not a Vorto value, then it does fall back to the Umbraco one.
Okay, so if it can't find a Vorto, I presume it's kind of a JSON or a kind of object. If it can't find that object in the database or the data source, then it will just go back and, like you say, fall back to the default value.
Exactly. So if I jump back to the front-end website then, so currently on this one we're on EN, so we're on the English one, which is why it's showing the English.
Yeah.
But if I just jump across to the Danish one, then you can see that it has chosen the right translation.
Yeah, straight away it's just translated. Fantastic.
Chosen the right one, and I think we did French as well, yeah. So you can see that one's doing the French as well.
Cool.
So what I'll do is I'll just go in and jump into the Doctype again and just swap a couple more of those over to run on Vorto. So I'll just switch you, Vorto text stream, and you. And we'll also swap a media picker because I've got a wrapped media picker as well, just to show that there's a few more complicated ones work as well.
So I suppose this might be, I'm just thinking from our use cases here at work. We often do sites for multilingual, and we typically do the multiple kind of trees scenario. But this would still be good for, say, for example, Switzerland, where they have multiple languages in the country. So we could have Swiss French and I can't remember the other language, but the other kind of variant of the language for Switzerland, and do the kind of the one-to-one in that part of the tree.
Yeah. So there's obviously arguments for either side.
Of course.
For this, I think the multiple website way works really well. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but sometimes there are reasons that you might want one-on-one. For the reason why I built this, it was more to do with a shared kind of product catalog. So where the products were always going to be there, it's just whether they showed or not. So this works a lot better to be able to kind of handle those translations rather than setting up multiple products in multiple locations.
Because you're just copying the same node over and over again. So no, that makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've converted a few more text boxes over, and I can see that you've also done the banner background image as well.
Yeah, so I'm just going to show another nice little feature on it. So obviously, each one of these works standalone, so you can just switch between kind of multiple languages. So in this one, I've got English on, I've got Danish, and then French. But you're probably going to want to work on the same ones at the same time. So there is a nice thing at the bottom of the menu as well, which is sync all. If I just check that, and then on here, if I chose like Danish, it'll switch every Vorto property on that page to the Danish one. So it's just a nice way of being able to kind of jump them all at the same time. So I'll just
because I would imagine that would catch you out if you change one and forgot to have changed like the next property down, you would have just assumed that it should have been set to Danish or whatever.
Yeah. So in here then I've just populated the Danish one with a few more values, and you can see when I switch into English, they'll switch over as well.
Cool.
And so saved and published that. We'll just have a quick look on here for English. Oh yeah, I need to switch my template over. Do not panic. So I just need to switch these over to be using all Vorto values now because they're all converted over.
Yep.
So just double check that then. And there you go. So that's the English one. And you can see if I switch to the Danish now, we've got Danish, and we've actually got a different background image as well. So again, you might have a background image with text in, or you might have products that are only relevant to one language and not another. So again, it gives you that flexibility to do something completely different between the languages.
No, that's that's really, really nice. So that was a media picker, yes?
Yep.
So
as I said,
go on.
Well, as I say, the upload one, which is the default for that starter kit, there's a few things that need ironing out. So I just switched it to media picker. But yeah, most of the property editors that are built in should work nicely with Vorto. So.
Okay. I'm going to then stir the pot. Would the new fancy image cropper work? So if I picked an image and then set a different crop for a different language, I don't really know the use case why, but but would it be possible, or is that just plain crazy?
Short answer is I don't know, but
okay.
The long answer is it should be. So if it's not, then I'll obviously work and we'll try and make the idea behind Vorto Real is to try and make everyone be able to be wrapped around it. So I think majority of the things it's never comes down to the individual property editors. It's just understanding how Umbraco works. I think there's just a few things I need to understand a bit more about Umbraco so that I can make it work with pretty much everything. So hopefully. Once we've had a bit more real-life usage, we'll iron out the wrinkles and should be able to wrap everything. But that's obviously a broad statement, but we'll see how that
goes. Fantastic. Obviously, maybe a month or so ago, I had the guys from Emulous demoing Archetype or Archetype. Would that even be possible? So they've written some crazy complex property editor. Which is obviously a property editor that nests property editors. Could Vorto then wrap Archetype or Archetype so I could then have different, for different languages, different values for those nested property types? Bit Inception, but
well, I help out occasionally on the Archetype thing as well, so I know there's a lot of crossover, and technically they work in very similar ways. So in theory, again, yes, it should work. So you can put Archetype in Vorto, and theoretically you can put Vorto in Archetype, which is why it always gets really interesting when you start thinking about serialization, because that's probably the hardest part in these.
I can imagine for you.
Just saving the data down and getting the data back. But yeah, absolutely. The whole idea again is that everything should be wrappable.
So if I'm creating my own property editor and I want to make it ensure that it works with Vorto, do I need to do anything special?
No.
No. So I just create my property editor as per normal. Even if it's saving semi-complex JSON type back to Umbraco, do I need to still not do anything?
No, that's fine. I mean, the way that Vorto works is when it's saving its value, it goes back to the original property editor and gets that to do the saving. So it uses the internal saving mechanism of the actual data type of the property editor. So there's whatever's programmed in the property editor should work. So it doesn't work anything else out itself.
Okay. No, that's really, really smart, and I love the idea behind it. Cool. Is there anything else you want to demo behind it, or is it as simple as it seems?
I can show you a little bit
of functionality.
Yeah, I mean, I can show you a bit of code behind it.
Yeah,
jump
that'd
on
be
here.
great.
So majority of it is just a bit of JavaScript, as you would kind of expect. So in here we'll just jump in the app plugins folder in the JS, and in here this is just the JavaScript for it. So I think you can kind of, when you look at it, you can see what it's doing. So likewise with the code, it kind of flows along that same route. So all we're doing is we're storing a dictionary of values. So instead of an individual value, we'll store a dictionary where the key is obviously the language code. So all it does is every time you kind of choose a menu item, we've got things which sets the current language. So that'll just toggle things on and off. So that'll toggle the active text field or whatever control you've got. And we've obviously got the concept of pinned as well. So we just keep track of which tabs are pinned, and that just uses Angular to do the binding, two-way binding, which is freaking awesome. That's like so powerful.
Fantastic.
If you actually look at this, for how little code you've got, and you can see what you get out of it, that's why I kind of really like playing around with this stuff at the moment. But yeah, so I guess the most interesting bit, I guess, is like the syncing thing. So we do use a bit of event broadcasting, so going between global scopes and local scopes, and just broadcasting events so that every Vorto value listens to that and automatically synchronizes itself across them.
That's really nice.
But other than that, it's scary how simple it is in some respects of how little it goes on. It's just all it's doing is updating the pinned, which is the current language, and then listening for the event to see whether it needs to synchronize. Updates the model, and then in the view for that in Vorto, it's just, again, it just uses a lot of ng show, ng hide, some repeats and clicks just to update things, and it's all nice Angular stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very nice. So how this is from how was you, or how are you pulling the property editor view, I suppose, through to your tabbed view in Vorto here?
Good question. So that's a nice. This is again another really nice thing about Angular, because it just makes it so much easier to kind of reuse things that's already built in there. So this is just the bit. This is mainly the code for like switching the pins and choosing which language you've got. But what we actually do, what I've got is a Vorto property directive. So if I just switch quickly to the HTML, this is just like the tab-based stuff at the top, and then for each property we do this, and we've got a Vorto property. So all this is doing, this is a custom directive which kind of mimics some of the stuff that Umbraco does, but then delegates that off to the actual Umbraco editor directive. So we just wrap it, set up the model that Umbraco directive is expecting, and then pass it off to Umbraco, and then we reuse what was already in Umbraco. So it's not a custom version of it, it's the real thing. We're reusing what was already in Umbraco, so it's using all the logic. So any changes to Umbraco would automatically apply to this in that respect. And that's one of the really powerful things I think about Angular, is just how much you can kind of reuse a lot more.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. So I presume, just because I'm curious from my own standing, I presume this is already on GitHub and open sourced?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Fantastic.
it's already on our. There's a few people that are already using it. A few bits of feedback that we've had, and just getting those things updated, and hopefully we'll do some more stuff. And like I say, get more property editors tested, and just make sure everything can work with it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Is there anything else we'll look in the code, or is it best to just take a few questions that we've got coming?
I think questions is probably best. Like I say, the code itself is pretty simple. It's all on GitHub, so if you do want to have a look, then by all means just
browse the source.
Yeah,
very, very nice.
Cool.
Okay, so let's take a question from Mr. Kelleher. So Lee Kelleher asks, how did you find the learning curve for AngularJS, given your background with Knockout.js? Is there anything that's better or worse in either framework?
Yeah. So I'm always of the opinion every framework's got its use. It's just knowing when to use it. So obviously I knew a bit about Knockout from version 5 days, and back then Angular wasn't even around, so it wasn't even an option back then. But they're both very good at what they do. I would say Angular is like the steroids version of Knockout. So Knockout basically handles the two-way binding, whereas Angular does that and gives you a hell of a lot more. So obviously with that comes a greater learning curve as well, because there's a lot of concepts to understand, and I guess most of that came down to just my own inquisitiveness, just sat around playing around with it and figuring out how everything works. So yeah, it's going to be quite steep, but once you understand the concepts, it's actually pretty powerful. And I think the fact that you can see stuff happening really quickly means it gives you that instant feedback and gratification that you are picking things up pretty quickly. So.
No, very nice. So did you use any particular resources, or was you, like you say, just inquisitive and just started hacking around? Did you?
Sure. The three main ones for me is probably the documentation on Angular's own website and the Bell documentation, which is actually really good, done by Pear, just to get an idea of all the services and resources and things that are available within Umbraco to be reused. And then just literally picking through the code that's already in version 7. That's probably the best way that I ever find out how things work. You just think about what you want to do, think about something very similar that does something kind of like what you want to do, then go and pick it to pieces and figure out why it does what it does and how to change it to do what you need it to do. So that's generally how I do those things. So.
No, that's a very good explanation, and yeah, it's probably similar to how I would approach the same problem. Is learn from others and see what you can rip off and understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So Ravi asks, can you add user permissions to limit the languages a person can edit for?
Not directly within Vorto, but I did have an interesting request from somebody which has just been released in the new version, which if I just share my screen briefly.
Yeah, no, go back. Go back. Let's take a look.
Well. So let me just go back to this. So obviously the choice of languages, at the moment we either use all the installed languages or all the in-use languages, but I guess you could come up with a lot of kind of different business cases as to when some language should be used and some language shouldn't. So what we've actually got is there is an event that's fired as it's kind of populating that list of languages. So you can just hook into this, which is vorto.filterlanguages. Let me just look that a bit. And it's just an event, and in the arguments you get a list of languages that will be returned, but you can alter that list. So again, what Ravi could do is in that event kind of look up who's the current member, see what their permissions are, and actually filter out any languages they shouldn't be allowed to do. So rather than building and making Vorto really complicated, we've just tried to give you access to the languages before we return it to the editor, and then you can do your own logic and actually decide whether some language should be in there or shouldn't be in there. So.
No, that's a fantastic approach to the problem. Give us event hooks and allow us to modify, like you say, modify that list before it gets returned to the editor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So that was a question from Ravi. Lee Kelleher asks, from all your packages, do you have a personal favorite?
There
must be at least one or two that stands out.
I don't know.
After all these years, you've created dozens and dozens of packages, and there must be something that you either love to keep maintaining, or was really fun to do, or there must be something that sticks out in your memory.
They're all fun to do. I mean, probably the one at the time was probably Desktop Media Uploader, just because there was nothing else like it at the time, and it saved so much time. I built that when I was working in a project that was dealing with a lot of files, a lot of images, and it was a real pain to kind of upload things.
One at a time.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, again, it's born out as necessity, which is the best time to kind of produce something. So that was put that together, and that was great at the time. Obviously, we've got much nicer features within Umbraco now that it's a bit redundant, but yeah, that was probably the one I was most proud of at the time, I guess.
Cool, very cool. Very, very nice. Another question from Ravi asks, would Vorto work with, hang on, my.url.com/fr and my.url.com and my.url.com/de? I think he's just talking about the different host names and kind of subdirectories.
Yeah, in that respect, it works with whatever Umbraco works with. So all it's doing is using the internal stuff. So again, if Umbraco supports those different URL structures, you don't have to have the domains on the root. They can be dotted around and things. So it just reads whatever languages are available. And like the advanced thing at the beginning in the pre-values where you can choose an XSLT statement to kind of filter in that respect, then you can use that to figure out whether a language should be shown. And again, then we've got this event as well that you can use if you need to do more dynamic filtering. But from a domains perspective, Vorto doesn't have any kind of prerequisites. It's all down to whatever Umbraco supports.
So as long as Umbraco supports it, Vorto will do it.
Yep.
Cool. Very, very nice. Another question from Mr. Lee Kelleher. He asks, where do you get your package ideas from, and how do you find the time to build them? Very good question, I think.
Yeah.
How do you find the time?
Well, package ideas generally come out of necessity, which is, like I say, the DMU came from I had a job where I had to upload a lot of files.
Yep.
This Vorto came along where there was a potential project where I needed to do a big product catalog, needed to handle lots of languages, so it seemed like a really good package idea to build because it wasn't out there. Finding time, yeah, I don't know that one either. It's just
you just magic time.
Yeah, literally every minute I'm probably sat at this computer, which my wife's not too happy about, but
yeah, I'm sure that could be said for most wives or girlfriends or partners.
Yeah, I guess ultimately you've got to enjoy what you're doing. So, like I say, playing around with Angular right now is like really interesting, real fun. So if you enjoy it and it's fun, then you're gonna make the time. So
yeah, I think that's a very good point. Yeah, if you enjoy what you do, and you'll find the time or you'll make the time. So yeah, very good point. I think we've just got one more question before we wrap up. So this one again is from Ravi. So he asks, I know it's early days for Vorto, but is there a restriction on the number of languages it can support?
I can't say I've fully tested like lots of languages. So obviously I've put it together as it is now. So obviously whatever tests come back, if people use it and find problems, we'll try and iron those out. But I don't see any reason why there should be. I guess it could end up being a performance thing. If you've got lots of languages, lots of properties on one Doctype, then you've got to think for every language that property is being added several times. So that's probably the only possible area that we could probably look into and just double check. But right now it seems to be going well, people using it and positive feedback. So we'll just keep listening and figure anything out as we go along.
Fantastic. This is just cropped in at the very last second, but it's probably a very similar question that you've just touched on. This is from David Brendel. Any ideas on performance with lots of properties, tabs, and languages? Does it get slow sometimes?
Yeah. Again, I haven't tested it to that extent, so we can obviously go along and have a go, see what happens, and then we'll just iron out as we go along. Just make sure, like most things, progressive enhancement and make things work as it's a problem. I like to be pragmatic about these things.
No, yeah, exactly. Why do a ton of work when it may just work out the box already?
Yeah.
So fantastic. I think that's it. We're done for questions. I did have a question, but I have just forgotten it myself.
Can't have been a good one then.
No. Let's see if I can quickly think before we wrap up. No, mine's gone blank. I'll have to ping you on Twitter or something if I remember.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. You can always ask me.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for talking with us, Matt. And it's a shame, unfortunately, you're not going to be at Code Garden this year. But
no.
As you hang your head in shame there. Oh dear. Never mind.
Next year.
But yeah, exactly. Next year. Always next year.
Yeah.
If not, I will see you soon. Potentially, maybe at the Embraco UK Festival later this year.
Absolutely.
If not, hopefully sometime before.
Will do.
Excellent. Thank you for talking, Matt. Speak to you soon.
No problem.
Cheers, mate. Bye. 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 Bye.